I'm in the big leagues, told him don't miss me. Ballin' like Houston, ayy, feeling like Whitney. I need a bag, bruh, send it through quickly. I'm making his dog, like I'm in the big leagues. Told him that I gotta go, dog. I'm riding a road, y'all. I think that I'm back in my bag now. So I need that go, y'all. Got hits when he throwing the fastball. Just too quick for it, peeling off like the whip orange. Seen they effort is.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Another Turnover, the basketball podcast where a basketball fan with zero basketball credibility gives his opinions on what's going on in the NBA. Opinions that nobody asked for. As always, I am your host, Mr. Chris Aaron Murphy, aka AA Ron. And ladies and gentlemen, let's just jump right into it. Folks, we are deep in the trenches of the NBA playoffs, specifically deep in the trenches of the second round, aka the semifinals. So a lot to talk about, a lot that has happened since last week's show. So let's get right into it. So last week we started in the Eastern Conference. This week we are going to start in the Western Conference. So let's take a look at what has happened this past week in the semifinals. So I'm going to start with the 3-seeded Warriors and the 2-seeded Memphis Grizzlies. So this series, as of the time you're listening to this, is now 3-2. Golden State needing one more game to get back to the Western Conference Finals. Now, like I said last week, this series has been surprisingly chippy. Well, not necessarily surprisingly, but it's been chippy. It has been filled with animosity and drama, and I am loving every single minute of it. So Golden State, they got the split that they wanted. They split the first two games, winning game one, losing game two. So they held serve at home at the Chase Center. So they went up 3-1 in the series, needing only one more game. Now, did this give them flashbacks to being up 3-1 in the 2016 finals? I mean, like Steph, Clay, and Draymond were on that team. Iggy was on that team. Kevon Looney, I believe, was on that team as well. So little flashbacks. I mean, maybe, maybe not, but who knows? Maybe they're thinking about it. Game 5, unfortunately for the Golden State Warriors, was not much of a game at all. It was honestly pretty terrible. Like, with the Memphis Grizzlies not even having Ja Morant, they were up by 55 points at one time. Like, you are a championship caliber team in the Golden State Warriors, and don't get me wrong. I mean, Memphis is good. They've been great all season, but they're playing without their best player, and you get down 55 points. Like, that's pretty awful. I mean, they ended up losing. I think they ended up losing by like 38 or 39 points, and even that is bad in and of itself. But you get down 55 points, like, I don't know how I feel about that. Like, this is a team you've beat 3 times already. Like, it don't make sense to me. But Klay Thompson said in the post game, I mean, he said this is embarrassing. He's like, that's embarrassing to get down by that many points. He's like, we got our what's kicked, and I mean, he's right. Like I said, a championship caliber team like Golden State Warriors. If it was the other way around, like, I'd say the same thing about the Grizzlies. Like, that shouldn't happen. But I'll give credit where credit is due. The Memphis Grizzlies, without Ja Morant, have played incredibly well all season. I think they were 20-5 out of 25 games without Ja Morant this season. So they know how to play without him. They play with so much confidence. They move the ball very well, very unselfishly, and they play great defense, especially great perimeter defense. So they're used to playing without Ja. They were used to playing without Ja for an extended period. So, I mean, credit to them. Like, they did not let up, and obviously they're playing for their lives, because if they lose again, they're done. They're going home. But like I mentioned, the animosity between these two teams has been fun to watch. After the game 4 win, I believe it was, Steph Curry was asked what the strategy was going to be going into game 5. So that was 2 nights ago when you're listening to this. And he basically said, we're going to go in and whoop that trick, like, that classic rap song. And so as the Grizzlies were, beating down the Warriors in game 5, what did they do? They played whoop that trick on the PA system and had somebody performing it. And Draymond Green, I love Draymond Green. I know Draymond Green is polarizing for a lot of people here that love or hate him. I love Draymond. Draymond is a national treasure to me. But he's dancing, like twirling his towel, like in a circle and dancing to whoop that trick. And I'm like, dude, you're down by 50 points. Like, why are you doing that? But like, if anybody who I'm not surprised did it, it's Draymond Green. Like, and he said in the post game I was watching, he's like, hey, I mean, if you're gonna dish it out, you got to be able to take it. He's like, we got our, what's kicked tonight, and we're going to bounce back, watch film, and be better. So he's absolutely right, but go watch the video if you haven't seen it. It was playing all over social media. Draymond Green dancing the whoop that trick with the Memphis Grizzlies crowd. It's hilarious to me. Like I said, Draymond is a national treasure, but I picked Golden State to win this series. Picked Golden State. I'm with Ja Morant playing. I picked Golden State to win in 7s. Series is headed in kind of the direction I anticipated. I didn't think the Warriors would be up 3-1. Obviously, I didn't think that Ja Morant was going to get injured. I wouldn't be surprised though if Golden State ends up closing it out in 6. So with no Ja Morant, I think they said he's pretty much been out for the remainder of the playoffs, which is probably the remainder of this series. I think the Warriors probably wrap it up to when you're listening to this. It should be tonight. Yeah, Friday night. I think they end up wrapping this up, and they will be back in the conference finals for the first time since 2019. Now, if you're Golden State, you better win at home Game 6, because they know better than probably anyone. Anything can happen in a Game 7. Obviously, like I said, they lost Game 7 at home against the 2016 Cleveland Cavaliers led by LeBron and Kyrie Irving. Memphis right now is honestly playing playing with house money. So no Ja Morant, and nobody's expecting them to win right now. A lot of people picked against them with Ja Morant, but Memphis is playing with house money. You do not want to give Memphis a chance. They end up winning Game 6. Anything can happen in Game 7. But one silver lining, I guess, if you're a Golden State Warriors fan, is we're gonna get Game 6 Klay Thompson back. Klay Thompson has had some, iconic historic performances in Game 6. So we shall see what ends up happening with that. But that's what I'm going with. I'm sticking with the Warriors. Like I said, my original prediction was Warriors in 7. I would not be shocked if they win tonight, wrapping this series up in 6 at Chase Center. But let's talk about the other series in the Western Conference. Let's talk about the number 1 rated Phoenix Suns and the Dallas Mavericks. So the Phoenix Suns lead this series 3-2 going into Game 6, which I believe Game 6, as you're listening to this, is Game 6 tonight? As I'm recording this Thursday night. Yeah, they're the second game. They're the late game tonight. So the winner will be, by the time you're listening to this, either Phoenix will be moving on or they'll be at Game 7. So now this series has surprised me in a lot of different ways, or a few different ways, I should say. First, I was honestly surprised by how well Dallas reserves have played in this series. For the most part, excluding games 1 and 2, but for the most part, they played pretty well. And surprisingly so for a lot of people. Dorian Finney-Smith shooting 47% from three-point range, averaging about 12 points per game. Maxi Kleber, who I hadn't really heard of. I don't really watch a whole lot of Dallas Mavericks games, up until the playoffs, but shooting 40% from three-point range. Davis Bertans, a former San Antonio Spur. I knew he could shoot the lights out. He's shooting 57% from three-point range. Pretty incredible reserve play from the Dallas Mavericks. Luka now, like I said, in the first couple games of this series, and honestly partly throughout the regular season, hasn't always had too much consistent help, but the players that I just mentioned, Finney-Smith, Kleber, and Bertans, have been pretty solid overall. I've expected more from Spencer Dinwiddie. They made that trade for Spencer Dinwiddie, swapping basically Dinwiddie and Kristaps Porzingis, who they traded away. And I expected more from him. He's only averaging 7 points per game for this series, which is pretty mind-blowing. Credit to the Phoenix Suns defense, or he's just, not aggressive enough, but he can drop buckets. I remember when he was in Brooklyn, he can ball. Even in Washington, he was balling out. So obviously Luka is a very ball-dominant guard, but I am surprised that he is playing as poorly as he is. But like I said, the other reserves that I mentioned, playing pretty well. One of the other things that I was also surprised at about this series is kind of the budding rivalry that we're seeing between Luka and Devin Booker. I kind of like what I'm seeing. I'm not saying I want these guys to hate each other, but they gotta be best friends. The league it's definitely a best friends league now. It seems like they all kind of hang out in the off season and whatnot, which is fine. Do what you want in your personal time, but I like seeing that animosity between players. These players just don't really care for each other, and they really, really, really want to beat the other person to advance in this playoff. So I kind of like it. Now, kind of the debate over the past couple of days that I've seen is like, oh, who would you rather, want on your team, Devin Booker or Luka Doncic? And I'm like, ooh, man, like, I love Luka Doncic. Don't get me wrong, like, I really, really do, like, but I think that's closer than people think, like, because I mean, most of the consensus that I saw was people saying that Luka Doncic is better. I mean, he's a better playmaker. I wouldn't say he's not a better scorer than Devin Booker is. I don't know. That one is pretty close. Like, if I had to choose today for the players for what they are now, I mean, Luka arguably has a slightly higher ceiling, I would say, but that's tough. Like, I mean, I'm just a little biased. So Luka's one of my favorite players to watch. So I would go with Luka if I had to choose between Devin Booker and Luka starting in my franchise, but like, that's close. I mean, you really can't go wrong with either one of them. But like I said, I'm surprised to see the budding rivalry that these two have had so far. I mean, they really do not rock with each other. It was funny. I think it was game 5. No, game 4 or 5. One of the two. It might have been 3. But Devin Booker basically he got fouled, but he kind of flopped and kind of acted a little bit, going down to the floor, staying down on the floor, and he was like, "Oh, that's basically the Luka Doncic special." And I'm like, "Ooh, okay." After another play, different game, Devin Booker stole the ball from Luka Doncic on a dead ball and basically took it from him and just shot it. And Luka kind of gave him a look. It's like okay. I can't repeat what he said. Like, I mean, I kind of read his lips, but yeah, he was like, okay. He's like, I see how it is. So, and then after their game 5 loss, Luka Doncic made a comment going back to the locker room. Basically says like, oh, I'm hearing a lot of talking, when people are ahead. Like, and he repeated it twice, and I was like, ooh. I like this. Like, it's fun to watch, these teams just kind of go head to head. Really, really intense battles between the two of them. So hey, like, could this be the next great rivalry? I'm not saying it'll be a Magic and Bird, but like Booker and Doncic do not care for each other at all. Like I said, that game is tonight, game 6, that is, of this series as of this recording, and you're listening to this on Friday. So the Suns should wrap this up. I can't remember. I think my original prediction was Suns in 5, so obviously that's wrong. The Suns should wrap this series up, though, tonight. By the time you're listening to this, we'll see. I'm predicting that the Suns win in Game 7. Like I said, this is being recorded before Game 6 is played. I wouldn't mind seeing it, I'm predicting Suns win this game in Game 6. I wouldn't mind a Game 7 of this series, of this series. We haven't had a Game 7 so far yet this playoffs. Hopefully we do. I mean, who doesn't love a Game 7, right? But I'm going to go with the Suns to close this out in 6 games. But, hey, we'll see. We'll see what happens. But, excuse me. Let's go ahead and transition to the Eastern Conference. Let's take a look at the 3-seeded Milwaukee Bucks and the 2-seeded Boston Celtics. So, Milwaukee Bucks are leading the series 3-2, going back to Milwaukee. Like, oh man, I do gotta admit, I am nervous for this one. Everybody knows, I mean, I'm a Boston Celtics fan. They're my second favorite team in the league, my favorite Eastern Conference team. Excuse me. I did pick Boston to win this series in 7. So, I mean, so far we're on track, right? I mean, obviously they have to win in 7 now. Otherwise, if they lose again, they're done. Game 5, though, that Game 5 loss from when you're listening to this 2 nights ago, that was a really, really tough loss. I mean, that could honestly spell the end for the Boston Celtics season. Now, they were up, the Celtics that is, Celtics were up double digits nearly the whole game. Every time I was watching it, I was kind of multitasking, doing other things, but every time I look at the screen, they're up double digits, Up double digits in the 4th quarter. They're up 6 with about a minute to go, and I was like, oh, okay, we should got this. All we got to do is, go basket for basket or whatever, just kind of, play some good defense that they've been doing pretty much all year, will be good. And they blew it. I mean, you had 2 terrible turnovers. Both from Marcus Smart. I mean, he tried to go to the basket for a layup and ended up getting blocked by Drew Holiday, and Drew Holiday threw the ball off him, and it, was off the Celtics. And then that last play of the game, Marcus Smart was bringing the ball up the court, trying to dribble through like 2 defenders, and you had Jason Tatum wide open on the wing that could have ended up tying the game because they were down by 3 points. There was about 5 seconds left, could have had a really good shot. And Drew Holiday, I mean, credit to Drew Holiday's defense, phenomenal defense, but turned the ball over. And And I was like, dude, what the heck? Marcus Smart? Like, come on now. Like, Tatum was, like I said, wide open, and they couldn't seal the deal. Like, if you're Jason Tatum, like, I'm sure they probably were trying to get him the ball, but, like, you got to get the ball in that situation. Like, Jason Tatum said in the postgame, that the loss kind of stings, and, but hey, it's first to 4, so, we're not out of this yet. And he's right. I like that mentality a lot. It's like, yeah, this sucks. Like, we lost a tough one, but hey, like, I mean, we got to win 4 games. Like, they haven't won 4 games yet, and we haven't won 4 games yet. So I like that mentality, but it definitely feels like a demoralizing loss. It feels like a really dire situation. Like, you are going back to Milwaukee tomorrow, or tonight, 6:30 p.m. Central Time. You are going back to Milwaukee for Game 6, and then if you end up winning that, you still got to play Game 7, and we all know Giannis. Like, Giannis is going to show up. Like, and shout out to Giannis for this game, that Game 5, that is 40 points, 10 rebounds on the road. Holiday, like I said, with 2 big defensive stops. I mean, Giannis is going to show up. We know Giannis is going to show up because he's proven that. He's a champion, Finals MVP. I mean, he's proven that he is going to show up. Boston has proven, though, that they can win on the road. Obviously, they won Game 4 of this series, so they can win in Milwaukee. But the situation, like I said, is dire. Like, they have to win back-to-back against the defending champions. And it's a tall task. Like, I'm still riding with the Celtics. I picked them in 7. Like, I picked against them in the first-round series, and I'm not doing it again. They're probably going to prove me wrong, but, I mean, we'll see. But they are going to need a solid collective effort. Like, I'm going to need 30 from Tatum. I'm going to need 30 from Brown. I'm going to need Marcus Smart, like, no turnovers. I'm going to need at least 18 points, 8 assists, 8 rebounds, that kind of game. I'm also going to need some solid production from Al Horford. Al Horford, give me 15 to 17 points. Grant Williams, give me 3 or 4 threes made. I don't know if Robert Williams is going to play. He's been out for the past 2 games, and that's arguably part of the reason why they lost the past 2 games. But, well, no, they won Game 4. But that's part of the reason why they are losing this series is because of his, lack of availability with his injury. But I'm going to need solid production all around from the Boston Celtics. Like, I don't want to see them, like, this. They've had an incredible season. I don't want to see them go out. But, like, hey, Milwaukee is still a defending champion, so give the respect where the respect is due. But last series in the NBA playoffs for the semifinals. Last series is the game that's going on right now that I'm low-key kind of looking at. So Miami Heat and the Philadelphia 76ers. So the Miami Heat, number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference, leading the 4-seeded Philadelphia 76ers 3-2. So as of the time of recording, the Miami Heat are up by 8 points in the third quarter. 10 points now. They just scored with about 8 minutes left to go. So not looking good for Philadelphia, but obviously a pivotal Game 6 tonight. Philly, has to win. A lot is riding on this one, and not just for the season, but this has, I think, franchise implications, partly for both teams, if I'm being completely honest. Now, let me explain. So, obviously Joel Embiid coming back in Game 3 and 4 completely changed the series, which we expected. Joel Embiid was the presumed MVP before it was announced that Nikola Jokic won it. Shout out to Jokic, that was my MVP. But Miami really can't do a whole lot with him one-on-one. Defensively, they pretty much have to bring the double teams, have to, bring that help defense over and kind of cheat a little bit and force other people to beat them, which is arguably, not a bad strategy, but, leave yourself susceptible to other guys like Tyrese Maxey and Tobias Harris and James Harden to beat you. But, from what I'm seeing right now, they just put up the stat. They are 1-9 from the field in this third quarter, so they are not looking good at all. But Joel Embiid, back to Joel Embiid, not at full strength, dealing with the orbital fracture in his face, the hand injury, I think torn ligament in one of his fingers or something like that. But he gave him enough to win those 2 games in Philadelphia to tie the series. But unfortunately, Philadelphia all year, partly with the Ben Simmons saga, but has lacked consistency. Last series, going up 3-0, and then, you lost Game 4 and you lost Game 5. It's like, oh man, what kind of production are you going to get? They close it out, but you've had a lot of inconsistency all season long. We don't know what James Harden's going to bring on a night-to-night basis with the player that he is now. We don't know what Tobias Harris is going to give us. We don't know what Tyrese Maxey is going to give us. I mean, he's young, so he gets a little bit of a pass because he's young, and this is not his team to lead, but he has been balling out pretty much most of the year. But there's been too many questions and too many variables all year with this Philadelphia 76ers team. Now, on the Miami side, Miami has a culture, a well-established culture in place under, Pat Riley and that organization. They know who they are. They are gritty. They are tough on defense. Pretty decent shooting all around. They're kind of slightly underrated when it comes to shooting. And great coaching led by Eric Spoelstra. So, I mean, they have a culture. They have an identity. If Philadelphia loses this game, like I said, they're down by 11 points right now. If they end up losing this game, this organization will probably need to do some serious soul searching. Like I talked about last week, I mean, they probably won't end up offering James Harden the max. Like, the player that James Harden is right now, I don't know if he's still dealing with the effects of his hamstring injury that he suffered last year in Brooklyn, but I would not offer James Harden the max for the player that he is right now. He just missed a terrible three, wide open too. Like, I would not offer him the max. I would probably look into seeing what you could get on the trade market for Tobias Harris. I would probably say, hey, we're going with Maxey and Joel Embiid as our future at this point, but they have a lot of questions to answer this coming up offseason, especially if they end up losing this game 6, which is not looking good so far. Now, like I said this could be franchise changing for both teams. If Miami ends up losing this series, I would say their future is kind of in question as well. Can you realistically be a championship team with Jimmy Butler as your number one offensive option? Now, don't get me wrong, he's playing well in this playoffs. I think he's leading in a lot of different categories, statistic-wise. I don't have them pulled up. I can't exactly remember what they were, but I looked at it yesterday. He's playing well offensively, but can he lead you to a championship? That's always been his thing. Is he a number one guy? I personally have never viewed Jimmy Butler as a number one. Solid number 2, an amazing number 3. But on a championship team, can you be led by Jimmy Butler? That's probably the question that, Miami is going to answer especially if they don't make it to the finals this year. But Kyle Lowry is definitely older. I want to see he's 34, 35. So, I mean, it's definitely older for the NBA. Tyler Hero, I believe, is up for a contract extension this summer. I could be wrong about that, but you got to decide how much you're going to pay him because he's been pivotal to what they've been doing over the past couple seasons. There have been some rumors that I've seen about, hey, does Miami's trying to keep a close eye on the Donovan Mitchell situation? Does he want out? Is Utah willing to move him? What could they offer? Also, Damian Lillard, is he going to ask, out of Portland? He's still on a long-term deal. So there's a lot of questions that are going to come up with both of these teams. I mean, if Philadelphia loses in the second round, definitely for them. But if Miami does not make it back to the finals in this playoffs, I'm sure they're going to have some soul-searching to do as well. But I said before the series, Miami was going to win it. I think I originally, I can't remember what I picked them in. I gave Philadelphia a puncher's chance with Joel Embiid. I don't remember exactly what I picked for the series and the amount of games, but I did pick Miami Heat to win this series and go back to the conference finals. But we shall see what happens. It's going to be pretty interesting this weekend. And next show, we'll be talking about the conference finals. But ladies and gentlemen, that is all the show I have for you folks today. Like I always say every week, if you are watching on YouTube, you can like, share, subscribe. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast goodness, like, share, subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. I am looking forward to what's going to happen this weekend. This weekend we should know who's going to be in the conference finals for both conferences. Should be pretty fun, should be pretty good. But I hope you have an amazing weekend. I've got some stuff planned for this weekend that I'm really looking forward to. But take care, be safe, and I will see you next week.
Just too quick for it, peeling off like the whip orange. Seen they effort, this piss poor. I got too much, I gotta tend to. Car payments and the rent due. Told y'all that I'm 6 foot, but with the money stabbing, I'm 10-2. Too much that I've been through, so I put it all in that rear view. Clean money in a black whip, got old problems with the friends new. Yeah, I'm in the big leagues, told her don't miss me. Ballin' like Houston, ayy, feeling like Whitney.